Welcome back to Established Dominance Fantasy Football. I'm your host, Ding, and this is the Week 5 recap. And we're going to break down every game and the fantasy implications moving forward. But before we jump in, hit the like and subscribe buttons. Follow us on X at Established Dominance, where you get real-time updates during the games. Do it for me. Do it for America. Do it for yourself. But most of all, do it for me. Let's start off by highlighting a couple of big injuries that happened this week. Stephenson had a knee injury. Gibson had to finish out the game. Check that status. He's probably a big waiver ad for you. Nico Collins had a hamstring injury. That needs to be monitored. Tank Dell would gain more snaps, probably. Achane had the concussion. He'll be week to week. He has a week 6 bye, so maybe he comes back. Wright would be the big pickup there. Aaron Jones had a hip injury. Didn't come back. Chandler got 14 carries after that, only 30 yards. But he had the lion's share, so monitor Aaron Jones moving forward. Okay, let's jump into the Sunday games. In the early UK game, where once again season ticket holders got screwed by the NFL, we have the Vikings and the Jets. Now the Vikings, they go to 5-0. Darnold was terrible because he finally faced a good defense. 179, 0, and 1 interception. And he lost a fumble. So 2 turnovers, no TDs. Not a good night. Now that's the Darnold we know and love. Aaron Jones, he was injured early. He only had 7 for 29. Chandler came in. He got the remaining carries, except CJ Ham-vultured that touchdown, which is terrible. Now, JJ got targeted 14, but he only caught 6 for 92. The rest of the team, they caught 3 balls or less, so really nothing to talk about there. Defensively, Minnesota had a pick 6. That really won them the game based on the momentum. Rodgers tried to bring New York back with a 244, 2 touchdown, and 3 interception line, tied a record for himself with 3 interceptions. Wilson was his main target, 22 targets, just insane. But he only caught 13 for 101 and a touchdown. Lazard also got his TD, 4 for 34 and a touchdown, and then Conklin went 6 for 55, so he had a nice PPR night. The biggest Jet news was Hall was nowhere to be found. 9 rushes for 23 yards, 3 catches for 14. Allen was worse. They both combined together, they only had 14 rushes. So, I talked about this at the beginning of the season. Rodgers, when he was a quarterback in Green Bay, Aaron Jones really didn't get that many carries during the game, but Aaron Jones was more efficient, got a lot of touchdowns. They didn't see that in this game. Hall's going to have to step it up, or this downward spiral is going to be worse than a hurricane. The Jets defense looked very good holding key players without touchdowns, but the pick 6 from Rodgers hurt them really bad. And then at the end of the game, he says he has a low ankle sprain, so monitor that new development. Now, Chandler would be a volume starter if Jones misses a lot of time, but he didn't look strong tonight. I mean, he averaged 2 yards a carry. He's probably going to be a target on the waiver wire, but buyer beware. In the early U.S. games, let's start off with the Bills and Texans. Now, again, the loss of Collins here was the big issue. C.J. Stroud had trouble moving the ball after Collins went out, and even with the Bills playing really subpar defense. C.J. had 331 for a touchdown and an interception. The lone TD went to Nico, who broke out on a huge pass. He caught 2 for 78 and a touchdown before he went out. Diggs was facing his old team. He went 6 for 82. But the big surprise was Ogunbowale's dominance. Now, he rushed 15 times for 30 yards. That's not very dominant, but 15 rushes led the team, and he caught 6 balls for 57 in the air. 21 touches. Whoa. Okay, Akers had the lone rushing touchdown. He was 9 for 42 and a touchdown. That touchdown saved his entire day. The question is, will Ogunbowale be the RB1 moving forward until Mixon returns? Now, we keep getting like this news that Mixon's going to come back. We don't know. He's practicing. He's questionable. He's doubtful. He's not going to play. Games. There's really no one who can effectively run the ball on this team until Mixon returns. But, catching the ball, Ogunbowale, he's probably somebody you need to target on the waiver wire. Now, Buffalo was a train wreck for the first half, but they woke up. No thanks to Allen, who went 9 for 30 for 131 yards and a touchdown. That's 30% completion. That was really bad. Oh, and he took some huge hits. I thought he got a concussion at one point, but for some odd reason they brought him back in. He wasn't very effective after that. They had a lot of success on the ground. Cook, 20 rushes, 82 yards and a touchdown, plus 2 for 17 catching. But yards were tough all day when it comes through the air, and everyone else on the team had 2 catches or less. Now, the targeting between Coleman, Kincaid, and Hollins was about even, with Coleman getting the lone touchdown on the big play, but only the 1 catch. Shakir was out today, and the offense seemed sloppy. And it wasn't because the Texans were really great on defense. So when Shakir comes back, we'll see if that improves. In the Colts-Jags game, the Jags finally got their first win, but they did everything in their power to blow it late in the game. Flacco was incredible. He had 359 yards passing, 3 touchdowns. 0 interceptions, but he did lose a fumble, so he did make a mistake, but he looked awesome. He even looked spry in a 21-yard run, old man running alert. It was great comedy. Trey Sermon took JT's job today and saved his day with a late touchdown, 10 rushes, 38 yards, and a touchdown with 6 for 25 catching. So that's a nice PPR day. He put up about 18 points, but it really doesn't look that great on paper if he doesn't have a touchdown, that's for sure. Goodson mixed in for 8 touches. He had some pep in his step, but Sermon seems to be the guy that they're going to start with and going to get the most touches. Downs was the high targeter with 12 targets. He caught 9 of those for 69, but the touchdown went to Pittman and Pierce and Mo Alley Cox, which was a miracle. Pierce looked amazing. 3 catches for 134 yards and touchdown. I think he's got 3 or 4 touchdowns on the year. This guy knows how to find the end zone. On Jacksonville, Lawrence had a good day. 371 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. 82% completion rate. That was really good. The biggest news was the back seat that ETN took to Bigsby, who we can definitively say now is the guy. He went 13 rushes for 101 yards and 2 touchdowns and caught 1 ball for 28. ETN went 6 rushes for 17, but he did catch 6 for 43. So it looks like we've had a role swap here. Now ETN is more of the third down guy. I can catch the ball, which he can. He's got great hands. Looks like Bigsby moving forward is going to be the first down and second down kind of guy. Now, Brian Thomas led all receivers with 5 for 122 and a touchdown. He looks elite. He has the opportunity to separate. You got to be starting him every week. Kirk went 4 for 88, but that was really it. He didn't look that great, but he did get a couple of opportunities. The big picture again, Bigsby is the guy to start moving forward. ETN is pretty much the backup. You might be able to trade ETN, get yourself a good wide receiver too, if you're heavy in running back. That's how I see this moving forward. Unless Bigsby were to get hurt, I think Bigsby is the guy to be starting. For Washington versus Cleveland, now here we have another game and another Watson temper tantrum. It's just embarrassing at this point. His performance, his etiquette. He threw for 125 yards and a touchdown and rushed 3 for 14, and he had a fumble. Ford and Foreman both had 9 rushes each, sub 50-yard games. Cooper was targeted 10 times, but only caught 4 for 60. Akins had the lone touchdown. Winston needs to come in. I think everyone agrees. You know, we've all know the Watson trade was the worst trade contract in history. It's time to bench him. On the flip side, Jaden Daniels was decent, but he had a rough day with 238 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception, completing about 50%. Now, he led the league in completions going in. His rushing numbers were outstanding, though. 11 rushes, 82 yards. Awesome. But that was more than all of his running backs, and that's a problem. Brian Robinson, he got 2 touchdowns. Fantastic. But Eckler got all the yards with 67. McLaurin was the lead again, 4 catches for 112 yards. No touchdowns, though. De'Ami Brown, he scored in the absence of Noah Brown, but none of the other wide receivers really commanded more than 3 targets. Ertz had a ridiculous 8 targets, but he only caught 2. Again, it was an ugly game throwing the ball on both sides. It's safe to say that Watson is on a short leash. I'd trade him if you can, or just bench him. Okay, Miami versus New England. Ouch. This game was really awful. Miami is bad, but New England is really bad. Brissett was 160 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. His best pass catcher was Douglas, who had a 6 for 59 line. The running backs were the bright spot, but we lost 2 in the game. Stephenson, who had 12 for 89 before he left with a knee injury, and then Achane, as we already talked about. Gibson performed well with a 6 for 52 line after Stevenson went out. New England played the standard game saying Gibson would start in the hopes that Miami would ignore Stevenson, which is laughable because, there's no pass offense from Brissett, so you should expect a heavy run coming out of New England. So you really fooled them. Great job, New England. Gibson will obviously need to be rostered, and he becomes a high waiver target if Stevenson misses time. For Miami, Huntley was terrible. 195 yards, 0 touchdowns. He found Hill a couple of times. Looked like he tried to force it a couple of times. Hill went 6 for 69. That's not terrible from PPR, but obviously not round 1 worthy. Jonah Smith showed up 5 for 62. Waddle 4 for 46. All were targeted evenly. The running game was impressive. After Achane went out, Mostert went 19 for 80 yards, but the surprise was Jalen Wright, 13 rushes for 86 yards. He's looking fast and powerful. Now, if Achane misses more time, Wright had an impressive timeshare with Mostert, but Mostert got the targets and catches. So look at the waiver wire for Wright, depending on Achane's status for his concussion. However, Miami is on a bye next week, so Achane's got 2 weeks to recover. So don't blow all your fab money on Wright or even Mostert, just in case Achane comes back in 2 weeks. Next game we'll talk about is the Ravens-Bengals. Now, Cincinnati lost this game due to poor coaching and playing scared at the end. Burrow was huge, 392 yards, 5 touchdowns, 1 interception, but the coach was afraid to give him the ball with a chance to win at the end of the fourth quarter, and instead they missed a field goal. Chase Brown was the most explosive back. He had 12 carries for 46. Moss only had 9 for 24, and both guys caught 3 balls, but Chase got the receiving touchdown. The big throws went to Chase, as in Jamar Chase, 10 for 193 and 2 touchdowns. He absolutely dominated. Higgins got 2 touchdowns himself. He went 9 for 83 and 2 touchdowns. For Baltimore, Jackson was the lead again. Threw for 348 yards, 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, no mistakes. Rushed for 55 yards, but he did have 2 fumbles on the ground. Now, that's something we talked about, preseason in the draft. He puts the ball on the ground a lot, but he scores a lot of points, so you have to look past that. Speaking of running, Henry, huge again, 15 rushes, 92 yards, and a touchdown, but he had a sub-100 game, which was a little bit of a surprise. Flowers, he caught 7 for 111, which was a bright spot. Bateman got the touchdown. He went 4 for 58 and a touchdown for the wide receivers anyway. Now, all the touchdowns went to the tight ends. Likely caught 3 catches for 13 yards and 2 touchdowns, so obviously demanding the red zone targets. But the biggest surprise of all was the third-string tight end Kolar, who had 4 targets, 3 catches, 64 yards, and a touchdown, and he had 2 red zone looks. Wow. Now, Andrews, the missing man, he finally came alive, 4 for 55. But is he like the third string now? I mean, seriously, we have to ask ourselves that question. Andrews is a prime trade bait, sell high right now. Go out and trade him, see what you can get for him. See if you can get a wide receiver too. Maybe people are like, oh, he's coming back. Not that I'm looking at. I mean, every other touchdown on the team went to the other tight ends. Andrews is done. All right, Carolina and Chicago. Caleb Williams, he's finally coming into his own. He's making his teammates look good. He went 304 yards and 2 touchdowns. He got 34 on the ground. Really nice day. Swift, he had another big night. 73 yards and a touchdown, plus 2 for 47 in the air. DJ Moore, impressive. 5 catches, 105 yards, 2 touchdowns. But no one else really inspired. Odunze went 5 for 40. Komet 3 for 57. Rashawn Johnson was the ultimate buzzkill. He vultured 2 touchdowns from Swift. Swift did all the work. Rashawn Johnson got like these 1-yard touchdowns. It was pathetic. Now, the Panthers were ugly. It looks like Dalton Mania was short-lived. He went 136 yards for 0 touchdowns and an interception. Hubbard was really the bright spot. 13 rushes, 97 yards, and a touchdown. Lost a fumble, but he looked fast. DJ Johnson, where are you now, bro? 3 catches, 23 yards. Leggett, he got hurt, so he's out. Coker got an opportunity. He caught 4 for 68. But I don't really think he's a waiver ad, even though Leggett's out. You'll just have to monitor their status. Looking at the afternoon games, San Francisco versus Arizona, the Niners, they blew an easy game, and Purdy didn't help. He only had 244 yards passing, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. Mason looked good on the ground, but he only got 14 carries for 89 yards, and he lost a fumble. Ayuk, he finally showed up. 8 catches for 147 yards. Yay, congratulations, here's $127 million. Kittle went 8 for 64, and Debo was almost non-existent. And then the game felt like the Niners wanted to force the ball to Ayuk because of his ridiculous new contract, and it cost them, in my opinion. Kyler Murray, he wasn't really dominant in the air. 195 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, but 83 yards on the ground and a touchdown. Wilson led all catchers on that team for 5 for 78. McBride, he's back from his injury. He caught 6 for 53, but dropped 2 touchdown opportunities. Harrison went 2 for 36, and that's the key. Take Harrison away, you should be able to beat Arizona, unless you're San Francisco. All right, another afternoon game, Denver versus Las Vegas. I've said it before, I'm going to say it again. Denver's defense is elite. Surtain's 2 interceptions and his 100-yard touchdown was really the story of the game. The Knicks had a good game. He really did. 206 yards passing, 2 touchdowns through the air, and a touchdown on the ground, which he, of course, vultured from Javonte Williams, who went 13 for 61. McLaughlin didn't have much on the ground, but he caught a touchdown on 3 catches. Williams led all receivers with 5 for 50. But again, we saw Knicks unable to get the balls to his wide receivers with consistency. And Vegas is a train wreck. Again, Minshew, he gets pulled. O'Connell was just as bad. Madison led with carries, 15 for 38 yards. That's not good. Abdullah looked better. 5 carries, 42 yards, and a touchdown. I wouldn't go out and just grab both of these guys unless you're desperate. Bowers, he's the only real player on that team. 8 for 97 and a touchdown. Jacoby Myers dropped a couple of catches, but he finished with 6 for 72. Adams is out when he comes back, or if he gets traded. Who knows? Crosby, he should be traded too. Las Vegas is trying to win the Shedeur Sanders lottery, so just stay tuned. But they are a great team to stream a defense against. Okay, Giants versus Seattle. Now, I told you, Daniel Jones, he'd be fine this week. 257 yards and 2 touchdowns, plus 38 on the ground. Slayton was the surprising leader with 8 for 122 and a touchdown. Wan'Dale Robinson, only 6 for 36. I thought those would be swapped. The big reveal was who's going to be the leading rusher on the Giants. Hands down, it's Tracy. 18 rushes, 129 yards. Looked amazing. Go get this guy if Singletary misses time. Gray, he looked like he could be the guy. He started out with it. Some really great catches, some really great runs. Then he gets a goal line run and fumbles it for a 101-yard touchdown for the defense. That was terrible. He comes back. The coaches are like, go find the bench and just sit there. He gets kneecapped. Tracy dominates. Now, if Singletary is out next week, you're going to want to start Tracy. On the flip side, Geno Smith, he was leading in almost every category of quarterback. He had a decent game. 284 yards passing, 1 touchdown, looked even better on the ground, 72 yards. But Seattle didn't run the ball. Walker owners have to be disappointed. He only had 5 rushes for 19, even though he led with a 7 for 57 receiving line. No touchdowns. Lockett led in yards with 4 for 75. Metcalf was 4 for 55, but he fumbled again. Smith and Jigba, he caught the only touchdown, 4 catches, 31 and a touchdown. Well, the last game in the late window, Green Bay versus the Rams. Packers tried to lose this late, but they seal it with an interception. Love went 224 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Not really his best. He hasn't been looking really great since he's come back from the injury, but I think he'll get better. Jacobs looks strong. 19 rushes, 73 yards, and a touchdown. Only 1 catch for 21. Kraft came out of nowhere, went 4 for 88 and 2 touchdowns. That's not going to happen again. Reed led the wide receivers, standard. 4 catches for 78, plus he had a couple of rushes. Wicks, who was targeted 13 times last week, couldn't catch a ball. 7 targets, 2 catches. When Watson comes back, he's probably going to take a back seat. On the other side, Stafford, being standard Stafford without any of his real receivers, 260 yards passing, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. He hit Whittington 7 times for 89, Atwell 6 for 58, Parkinson 7 for 52, and Robinson got the lone touchdown. Kyron Williams, again, carrying the team, 22 rushes, 102 yards for a touchdown. They brought Corum in to try to get a touchdown, and he found out that college is easier than the pros, and Williams had to be brought in after a couple of attempts, and then he got the touchdown. Corum is not a threat to Williams. All right, that'll do it for the Sunday AM and PM games. We haven't covered Sunday Night Football. That was delayed. But what do we talk about? Talked about a lot of trades, a lot of opportunities. Remember, depending on your league, week 8 could be the trade deadline, week 9, week 10. You need to look for guys that you can trade for right now. You want to sell while they're high. Andrews, we talked about. ETN, another opportunity. But look at the guys that we talked about. Try to work a trade or something to fill a hole, fill a bye week, something that could actually get you into the playoffs. Now, bye week 6 is coming up next week. There's 4 teams in the bye: Chiefs, Rams, Dolphins, and Vikings. You need to get out in front of it as soon as you can. And even look at week 7. Now, week 7, there's only 2 teams, Chicago and Dallas. So we'll talk waivers in another podcast this week, so stay tuned. Now, before we sign off, I want to give a shout out to our men and women in uniform who protect the freedoms we hold dear. Thank you for your service and sacrifice. And finally, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and follow us on X, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, so you can stay up to date on our latest content. And until then, remember, established dominance isn't just a catchphrase, it's a commitment. Are you ready?